The clatter of chips, the soft whir of slot machines, even the warm scent of freshly cleaned carpets. It all washes over me as Harold and I step up to the cashier. My hands tremble slightly, though not from fear, excitement maybe, from the small victories we've earned tonight. And then it happens. A uniformed man steps forward, his face blank, and says, "Ma'am, sir, please step aside." For a moment, I freeze. Our modest winnings, our careful bets, all of it suddenly seems fragile, like it could be snatched away in a heartbeat. I feel the weight of every assumption about our age pressing down. Pensioners, vulnerable, invisible. But then I notice her, a young dealer, moving quietly but with purpose, her eyes sharp and attentive. Clara sees more than the security guards do. She seems to recognize that Harold and I are not helpless, that we deserve to be treated with fairness. Something in her approach sparks a tiny flicker of hope. Have you ever been dismissed, underestimated, or ignored just because of how you look, your age, or the life you've carried for decades? Stay with us, because what begins as a small, humiliating moment will become a quiet fight for dignity, and a story about the unexpected courage that can appear when you least expect it. The casino hit us the second we stepped through those enormous glass doors, a wall of sound and color that seemed to push against my chest. You know that feeling when you walk into a party where you don't know anyone, and suddenly you're hyper-aware of every movement you make? That's what this was, only louder, brighter, and smelling faintly of cigarette smoke mixed with something floral they must pump through the vents. Harold's hand found mine automatically. His palm was warm, slightly damp, and I squeezed back without looking at him. We'd been married 46 years, and I could read his nervousness in the way his thumb twitched against my knuckles. "Well," Shinshized, his voice nearly swallowed by the electronic chiming of slot machines. "We're here." "We are," I agreed. Neither of us moved. The casino floor stretched before us like an alien landscape. Rows upon rows of slot machines blinked and chirped, each one competing for attention with flashing lights in colors I'm not sure have proper names. Somewhere deeper in, I could see green felt tables surrounded by people, cards being dealt, chips stacked in neat towers. A woman in a sequined dress walked past us carrying a drink that glowed blue. Literally glowed. This was nothing like our neighborhood back home, where the loudest sound was Mrs. Henderson's wind chimes and the brightest light came from porch lamps clicking on at dusk. Our house had been so quiet since David died. Too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo. Every meal felt too large for just the two of us. We'd rattled around in that space like loose change in an empty pocket for 7 years. This trip was Harold's idea, actually. He'd mentioned it one morning over coffee, his newspaper folded to an article about retirees traveling. "Maybe we should go somewhere," he'd said, not quite meeting my eye. Somewhere different. I'd known immediately what he meant. Somewhere that wasn't filled with memories of our son's baseball trophies in the garage, his high school graduation photo on the mantel, the growth chart still penciled on the kitchen doorframe. A cocktail waitress glided past us, her tray balanced perfectly despite her towering heels. She smiled, professional, automatic, and I felt suddenly aware of my sensible flats, my cardigan that was probably 10 years out of style. But she was already gone, moving through the crowd with practiced ease. "Should we?" Harold gestured vaguely toward the casino floor. "I think that's the idea," I said, and managed a small smile. We ventured in slowly, like swimmers testing cold water. The carpet beneath our feet had some elaborate pattern, swirls of gold and burgundy, probably designed to hide stains. Everything seemed calculated to disorient. No clocks on the walls, no windows showing whether it was day or night, just this endless, artificial brightness. Harold paused at a row of penny slots, studying the scenes with the same careful attention he used to give his accounting ledgers before retirement. A machine near us erupted in celebration. Bells, whistles, a recorded voice shouting, "Winner!" And we both jumped. The woman playing it scooped up a modest pile of tokens, looking pleased but not particularly surprised. "That could be us," Harold said, and there was something tentative in his voice. Hopeful, maybe. When had we stopped hoping for small pleasures? I remembered our honeymoon decades ago, just a weekend at a lake cabin, nothing fancy. We'd been so excited then, so ready to dive into whatever came next. Life had taught us to be more careful since. Loss had taught us to expect disappointment. But standing there in that cacophony of noise and light, Harold's hand still holding mine, I felt something shift slightly. Not hope, exactly, not yet. But maybe curiosity? We found the blackjack tables almost by accident, drifting through the casino like leaves caught in a gentle current. Harold had always enjoyed card games. Nothing serious, just Friday night poker with his old accounting buddies before they'd all gradually moved away or gotten too sick to gather. But blackjack was simpler, he said. You against the dealer, clear rules, none of that bluffing business. The table we approached had 3 empty seats and a dealer who looked young enough to be our granddaughter. She wore the standard casino uniform, white shirt, black vest, name tag pinned neatly above her heart, Clara. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she smiled at us as we hesitated at the edge of the table. "Good evening," she said. "Care to join us?" "We're not very experienced," I admitted, suddenly feeling foolish. Why? Warn her? Did I think she'd judge us? But Clara's smile didn't falter. "That's perfectly fine. I'll walk you through everything. First time in Vegas?" "First time anywhere in years," Harold said, pulling out his wallet. He'd withdrawn $200 specifically for this, budgeted it carefully like he budgeted everything. Not enough to hurt us if we lost it all, but enough to feel like we were really participating in something. Clara explained the rules with patient clarity, never once making us feel stupid for asking questions. Harold placed a modest $5 chip on the felt. I could see him calculating, figuring out how long our little stake would last at that rate. The cards came quickly. Harold got a queen and a 7. The dealer showed a 6. "Your decision," Clara said, those dark eyes watching Harold with genuine interest, not the glazed impatience I'd half expected. Harold glanced at me. I gave the tiniest nod. Stay, I thought, though I didn't say it aloud. Something about the dealer showing a 6 felt right. "I'll stay," Harold said. The dealer flipped her hidden card, a 10, then drew another, 23. Bust. "Winner," Clara announced, sliding chips toward Harold with practiced efficiency. His face lit up like a kid's on Christmas morning. It was just $5, nothing that would change our lives, but you'd have thought he'd won the lottery from the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. That expression, pure, uncomplicated joy. I hadn't seen it in so long. Since before David got sick, probably. We played for maybe an hour, never betting more than $5 or $10 at a time. The cards seemed to favor us. Not dramatically, nothing that would attract attention, but enough that our modest stack of chips grew steadily. Harold won 8 hands out of 15. I won 6 of mine. We kept trading glances, communicating without words, the way long-married couples do. Can you believe this? Should we stop? Just one more hand? Clara dealt each round with the same careful attention, never rushing us even when we took longer than necessary to decide. I noticed how she explained things to other new players at the table with equal patience, how she caught a mistake one man made in his betting and gently corrected it in his favor. There was something fundamentally decent about her, a quality I'd learned to recognize over 7 decades of watching people. During a quiet moment between hands, while another player was deciding whether to hit or stay, Clara caught my eye. "You're doing great," she said softly. "Both of you. It's nice to see people playing carefully, paying attention to the game." "My husband's an accountant," I said. "Well, was. Retired now. But old habits die hard." "Nothing wrong with being careful," Clara replied, shuffling the deck with fluid precision. "Wish more people approached the tables that way." There was something in her tone, a hint of disapproval for those who didn't, maybe, or concern. I filed, away without quite knowing why it mattered. When we finally cashed in our chips at the table, we'd turned our modest 200 into 340. Not a fortune, certainly nothing worth bragging about. But Harold was grinning as we stepped away from the felt, his arm around my waist. "We should get dinner," he said. "Celebrate." "We should," I agreed, feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Behind us, Clara had already welcomed new players to the table. Her attention shifted seamlessly to the next hand. But she'd glanced up as we left, given us a small wave, friendly, genuine. I waved back, thinking nothing of it except how pleasant it was to encounter kindness in unexpected places. The casino's cashier cage sat tucked against the far wall, marked by a small line of people clutching plastic buckets filled with chips or tickets printed from slot machines. Harold and I joined the queue, our modest stack of red and green chips collected in one of those cardboard drink trays a cocktail waitress had given us. 340, Harold murmured, touching the edge of the tray. "Not bad for an afternoon." "Not bad at all," I agreed. My feet ached. We'd been standing at that blackjack table longer than I'd realized. But the pleasant buzz of accomplishment made the discomfort seem trivial. The line moved efficiently. A tired-looking woman in a velour tracksuit cashed out what looked like several $1,000s in chips without anyone batting an eye. A young couple in matching sports jerseys collected their winnings amid giggles and whispered plans about where to spend it. Everyone seemed to move through the process smoothly, routinely. When our turn came, I approached the window with our tray. The cashier, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a name tag reading Dennis, barely glanced up. "Good afternoon," I said, sliding the tray forward. "We'd like to cash these in, please." Dennis began sorting the chips with practiced efficiency, his fingers moving in quick, mechanical motions. Red chips in one stack, green in another. He punched numbers into a computer terminal, then paused. His eyes flicked to a screen I couldn't see. "One moment," he said, reaching for something beneath the counter. That's when the man in the dark suit appeared at my elbow. "Ma'am, sir, I'm going to need you to step aside for a moment." I turned. He was young, maybe 35, with a clean-shaven face and an earpiece coiled into his collar. Security, obviously. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in his stance, authoritative, immovable, that made my stomach tighten. "I'm sorry," I said. "We're just cashing out our—" "I understand that, ma'am." His voice remained polite but firm. "If you could just step over here, away from the window." Harold had gone very still beside me. I could feel his confusion radiating like heat, mixing with my own. Behind us, the line was backing up. I was aware, suddenly and acutely, of people watching, curious eyes, whispered speculations. "Has there been some kind of mistake?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the flush creeping up my neck. This felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. "We won these chips fairly at the blackjack table. Table 7, dealer named Clara." "Ma'am, I'm not questioning how you acquired the chips." The security officer gestured toward a space away from the cage, near a column decorated with artificial palm fronds. "But I do need you to step aside while we verify the transaction." "Verify what transaction?" Harold's voice, quiet but steady. "We haven't completed a transaction yet." The security officer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sir, this is standard procedure for certain situations. If you'll just cooperate." "We are cooperating," I said, and even I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Inside, my heart hammered against my ribs. "But you haven't explained what situation requires verification. We've been playing blackjack. We'd like to cash out our chips. What specifically needs to be verified?" A woman behind us in line muttered something I couldn't quite catch. The security officer shifted his weight, and I saw his hand move toward the radio clipped to his belt. "Ma'am, I'm asking you nicely to step aside. If you refuse, I'll need to—" "We'll step aside," Harold interrupted softly. His hand found mine, squeezed once. "But I'd like your name, please, and the name of your supervisor." The officer blinked, clearly not expecting that request. "Officer Mitchell," he said after a pause. "My supervisor is Mr. Garrett, head of floor security." "Thank you," Harold said, and pulled a small notepad from his jacket pocket, the same one he used to track our household expenses. He wrote carefully, "Officer Mitchell, Mr. Garrett. Cashier, Dennis. Time." He checked his watch, 4:47 p.m. I watched him write, felt something steady and sure settle in my chest, despite the humiliation burning there. Harold's accountant brain, methodical and precise, already documenting. We stepped aside, away from the cashier window. Our chips remained on Dennis's counter, uncounted, uncashed. Around us, the casino continued its endless noise, bells, music, laughter, but it felt distant now, muffled by the ringing in my ears. "What's happening?" I asked quietly, though not so quietly that Officer Mitchell couldn't hear. Harold's hand tightened around mine. "I don't know yet," he said, "but we're going to find out." The hotel room felt smaller than I remembered. Harold closed the door behind us with a quiet click, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly unsteady. The adrenaline that had kept me upright through 2 hours of back and forth with casino management was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "They treated us like criminals," I said, hearing the tremor in my own voice. Harold set his notepad on the desk and pulled out the chair, sitting down heavily. "They treated us like we didn't matter." That was closer to the truth. Officer Mitchell had eventually allowed us to cash out, after making us wait 45 minutes, after summoning a floor manager who'd asked the same questions 3 different ways, after implying without quite saying that elderly patrons sometimes got confused about their winnings. The look in that manager's eyes, polite condescension wrapped in corporate courtesy, had been worse than outright accusation. We hadn't been confused. We'd won fair and square. "Let me see your notes," I said, reaching for the notepad. Harold had documented everything: times, names, exact phrases. 4:47 p.m. Officer Mitchell requests we step aside. No explanation given. 4:52 p.m. Floor manager Dawson arrives, asks how much we think we won. Emphasis on think. 5:15 p.m. Surveillance review requested. No timeline provided for completion. I traced my finger down the page. They never apologized. No. Harold's voice was flat. They acted like we should be grateful they processed our chips at all. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. I picked it up, expecting maybe a text from Harold's sister in Phoenix, but the number was unfamiliar. "This is Clara, from Table 7. I saw what happened at the cage. I'm sorry they put you through that." I stared at the screen, reading the message twice. Harold noticed my expression and leaned closer. "It's the dealer," I said softly. "From Blackjack. She's texting me." They do this sometimes with older guests. Another message appeared. "Especially ones who win consistently. It's not official policy, but it happens. Document everything. Times, names, what was said. You'll need it if you escalate." My breath caught. So it wasn't just us. It wasn't paranoia or oversensitivity. This was a pattern, something that happened enough for a dealer to recognize it, to reach out and warn us. "Thank you," I typed back carefully. "We're already documenting. What do you mean by escalate?" The response came quickly. "Guest services tomorrow morning. Ask for Patricia Chen. She's fair. Bring your notes. If they dismiss you, Nevada Gaming Control Board has a complaint hotline. I can send you the number." I showed Harold the messages. He read them twice, then looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in his expression all evening. Not just anger, but purpose. "She's risking her job to help us," he said quietly. "I know." I felt a warmth spreading through my chest, pushing back against the humiliation. We weren't alone in this. "We should take her advice. Guest services, first thing tomorrow." Harold nodded and pulled his notepad back, flipping to a fresh page. He wrote, "Tuesday morning, guest services, Patricia Chen." Then he paused, pen hovering. "We should write down exactly what we want to say, everything we remember, while it's still fresh." "Yes." I stood, crossing to the desk, pulling over the second chair. Side by side, we began reconstructing the encounter minute by minute. The work was tedious, but oddly soothing. Each detail we captured felt like reclaiming something: our agency, our dignity, our right to be taken seriously. Harold wrote while I spoke, occasionally stopping me to ask clarifying questions. What exact words did Dawson use? Did Mitchell touch our chips at any point? Who else was watching? My phone buzzed again. Clara, sending a 10-digit number with a short message. "Gaming Control Board, just in case you need it. You didn't deserve that treatment." I saved the number carefully, then looked at Harold. His jaw was set, his eyes focused on the page before him. When had we last worked together like this? Not since the weeks after our son's funeral, sorting through paperwork and insurance claims and memorial donations. That had been survival documentation, recording loss. This felt different. This was documentation with teeth. We arrived at guest services at 8:30 sharp, a full half hour before the casino floor really woke up. The office sat tucked behind the main lobby, marked by a discreet bronze plaque that seemed designed to discourage anyone from actually finding it. Harold held the door for me, and I stepped into a space that smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and artificial vanilla. A young woman sat behind the reception desk, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as we approached, her professional smile snapping into place like a mask. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "We'd like to speak with Patricia Chen, please," I said, keeping my voice even and polite. The receptionist's smile dimmed slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" No, but we were advised to speak with her specifically. It's regarding an incident yesterday evening at the cashier's cage. She glanced between us. Two elderly people in their sensible shoes and travel clothes, probably looking like every other retired couple who'd ever complained about complimentary drink service or a broken slot machine. Let me see if she's available. Can I have your names? Evelyn and Harold Bellman. She picked up her desk phone, speaking in a low murmur I couldn't quite catch. After a moment, she hung up and gestured toward a cluster of chairs near the window. Ms. Chen will be with you shortly. Please have a seat. We sat. Harold placed his notepad on his lap, hands folded over it like a shield. I watched the casino floor beyond the glass partition, early morning gamblers, mostly older folks like us, nursing coffee and feeding bills into video poker machines. Did they know? Had any of them been pulled aside, questioned, made to feel like criminals for simply collecting what they'd won? You ever notice how waiting amplifies everything? Every passing minute felt like proof that we weren't being taken seriously, that this was just another hoop designed to wear us down until we gave up and went home. Mr. and Mrs. Bellman. A woman in her mid-40s stood in the doorway, wearing a charcoal blazer and an expression that managed to convey both professionalism and genuine curiosity. Patricia Chen. She extended her hand as we stood. Please, come back to my office. We followed her down a short hallway, lined with framed photos of casino events, ribbon cuttings, charity galas, smiling executives shaking hands with local politicians. Patricia's office was small but organized, dominated by a desk covered in neat stacks of paperwork and a computer monitor angled away from the door. Please, sit. She gestured to two chairs opposite her desk, closing the door behind us. I understand there was an issue yesterday evening? Harold and I exchanged a glance. This was it, our chance to be heard or dismissed, to either move forward or accept that the system simply didn't care. Yes, I said, settling into my chair. We cashed out our chips after playing blackjack, and security asked us to step aside. We were questioned about our winnings, subjected to a surveillance review, and treated as though we'd done something wrong. We hadn't. Patricia picked up a pen, pulling a legal pad toward her. What time did this occur? 4:47 p.m. Harold opened his notepad, his voice steady. We have a detailed timeline, if that would help. Something shifted in Patricia's expression. Not surprise exactly, but a kind of recognition. She nodded slowly. That would be very helpful, actually. Walk me through what happened, please. Start from the beginning. Harold began reading from his notes, his accountant's precision turning the humiliating encounter into a calm, factual recitation. I watched Patricia's face as she listened, her pen moving steadily across the page. She didn't interrupt, didn't question, just documented everything Harold said. When he finished, she set down her pen and looked at us both directly. I apologize that you experienced this. It's not how we want any guest to feel in our establishment. Her words were careful, measured. That said, I need you to understand that security protocols exist for specific reasons. We're not questioning security protocols, I said, keeping my voice level. We're questioning why those protocols were applied to us without explanation, and why we were made to feel like suspects rather than guests. Patricia's lips thinned slightly. I'll need to review the incident report and surveillance footage. That will take some time. How much time? 24 to 48 hours, typically. 2 days, 2 more days of waiting, wondering, being treated like we'd done something wrong when we'd simply won a few hands of blackjack. Harold leaned forward slightly. We'd like to request copies of the surveillance footage, the security report, and any documentation related to our account activity during our stay. Patricia's eyebrows rose fractionally. That's quite specific. We've been documenting everything, I said. It seems only fair that we have access to the same information being used to evaluate our credibility. She studied us for a long moment, and I could practically see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Were we litigious? Were we the type to escalate this beyond the casino walls? Or were we simply two stubborn old people who wouldn't let go of a perceived slight? "I'll see what I can do," she said finally. "Is there a number where I can reach you?" Harold recited his cell phone number. Patricia jotted it down, then stood, a clear signal that our time was up. "I'll be in touch within 48 hours, she said, walking us to the door. And again, I apologize for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. As if we'd simply been delayed at checkout or given the wrong room key. We walked back through the casino in silence, the morning crowd thickening around us. Slot machines chimed their electronic melodies. Somewhere nearby, someone whooped as coins clattered into a metal tray. The normalcy of it all felt surreal, like we were moving through a world that had already forgotten what happened to us yesterday. "Do you think she'll actually help?" Harold asked once we were back in the elevator. "I think she'll do exactly what serves the casino's interests," I said, "which means we can't rely on her alone." Back in our room, Harold spread his notepad on the small desk while I retrieved the manila folder I'd started last night. Inside, printed confirmation emails from our reservation, the casino's guest policies I'd found on their website, and a blank incident report form I'd downloaded before we came downstairs. "We need more than just our word," I said, pulling up a chair beside him. "We need documentation they can't dismiss." Harold nodded, reaching for the hotel phone. "I'm calling the front desk. We need printed copies of our room charges, every transaction tied to our account since we arrived." While he navigated automated menus and hold music, I opened my laptop and began composing an email to Patricia Chen, summarizing our conversation and formally requesting the materials Harold had listed. Creating a paper trail felt instinctive. Decades of managing household finances and medical records for aging parents had taught me that nothing was real until it was written down, time-stamped, and saved in triplicate. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then opened the message. "This is Clara, from Blackjack yesterday. Heard you met with P. Chen. If you want to talk, I'm on break in the employee dining room at noon, service entrance, east side. Just say you're meeting a friend." I stared at the screen, reading it twice. Harold hung up the phone and glanced over. "What is it?" "The dealer from yesterday," I said slowly. "Clara. She wants to meet." Harold's brow furrowed. "How did she get your number?" "I don't know." But even as I said it, I remembered giving my contact information to the cashier yesterday, right before security intervened. Employee systems, shared databases. If Clara had access to player records, she'd have everything. Phone numbers, account activity, maybe even the surveillance footage Patricia claimed would take 2 days to review. "Do you think it's safe?" Harold asked. Did I? Meeting a stranger in an employee-only area of a casino that had already treated us like criminals felt risky at best, foolish at worst. But Clara had been kind yesterday, her eyes sympathetic even as the pit boss hovered nearby. And if she had information, real information, not the sanitized version management would eventually feed us, we needed it. "I think," I said carefully, "that we need every advantage we can get." Harold checked his watch. "It's 10:30 now. That gives us 90 minutes." Enough time to finish documenting what we have and figure out what questions to ask. He pulled his chair closer, shoulder brushing mine as we bent over the notepad together. The familiar rhythm settled over us. Harold's methodical note-taking, my instinct for patterns and inconsistencies, the quiet understanding that had carried us through 47 years of marriage and every crisis that came with it. We were still hunched over Harold's notes when my phone rang. My daughter's name flashed on the screen. I answered. "Hi, sweetheart." "Mom." Jennifer's voice carried that particular tight quality I'd learned to recognize over the years, the one that meant she was driving and upset and trying to sound reasonable all at once. "I just got off the phone with Aunt Marion." I closed my eyes. Of course Marion had called her. My sister-in-law had always been the family's unofficial broadcaster, spreading news with the efficiency of a wire service and twice the editorial commentary. "She said you're having some kind of problem at a casino in Las Vegas," Jennifer continued. "That security pulled you aside and you're making a big deal out of it." "That's not exactly—" "Mum, what are you even doing in Vegas? You didn't tell anyone you were going." Harold looked up from his notepad, concern creasing his forehead. I held up one finger, "Give me a minute," and stood, walking toward the window. "We decided last month," I said evenly. "It was a spontaneous trip. We didn't think we needed to clear our travel plans with the family." "That's not what I meant." Jennifer's sigh crackled through the speaker. "I'm just worried. Marion said you're threatening to sue the casino or something." "Over what? A misunderstanding at the cashier?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding." I kept my voice calm, measured, the same tone I'd used when she was 16 and convinced I was overreacting about her new boyfriend, the one who later stole her car. "Security detained us without cause, humiliated us in front of other guests, and the casino is now refusing to honor our winnings." "How much money are we talking about?" "That's not the point." "Mom." Another sigh, heavier this time. "I know you and Dad have been through a lot. Losing Danny it's been hard on all of us. But sometimes grief makes us, I don't know, see things that aren't there, overreact to small slights." The words landed like a slap. I gripped the phone tighter, watching the midday sun glint off the parking lot below. "You think we're imagining this?" "I think you're probably exhausted and stressed, and maybe what felt like a huge deal in the moment was just bad customer service. It happens, especially in places like that. They deal with thousands of people every day." "Jennifer." I turned from the window. Harold was watching me now, his expression carefully neutral, but his hands still on the notepad. "We documented everything. Times, names, witnesses. This wasn't bad customer service. This was deliberate." "Okay, but, Mom, honestly, what are you trying to accomplish here? You're going to go up against a massive casino corporation over a few $100s. A few $100s. As if the amount mattered. As if we were being petty, grasping, difficult. "It's about dignity," I said quietly. "It's about being treated fairly." "I understand that, but you have to think practically. These places have entire legal teams. They'll drag this out forever, and for what? So you can feel vindicated. Is that really worth the stress?" Behind her voice, I heard a turn signal clicking. "Traffic sounds." She was probably driving to pick up the kids from school, squeezing this call into the narrow window between her conference call and soccer practice. Her life was full, complicated, relentlessly forward-moving. Our problem, our humiliation, was just another item on her mental to-do list, something to be managed and minimized and, ideally, made to disappear. We're not dropping this, I said. Mom, we're not. I glanced at Harold, who nodded once. We were wronged. We're going to fix it. And I'd appreciate your support, but I don't need your permission. Silence stretched between us. When Jennifer finally spoke, her voice was softer but no less worried. Just be careful, okay? Don't let this become bigger than it needs to be. After Jennifer's call, I needed air. Harold and I walked the casino floor in silence, past the jangling slots and smoky poker tables, until we found ourselves at the coffee shop near the north entrance. A quiet corner booth, neutral territory. She thinks we've lost it, I said, stirring cream into my coffee. Harold shook his head. She thinks we're grieving. There's a difference. Is there? He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. We're not imagining this, Evelyn. We have receipts, timestamps, Clara's messages. This is real. I nodded, squeezing his fingers. The warmth helped. That's when I noticed the woman at the next table watching us, mid-60s maybe, with steel grey hair cut close to her scalp and reading glasses dangling from a beaded chain. She'd been pretending to study her phone, but her eyes kept drifting our way. Finally, she leaned over. Excuse me, I don't mean to eavesdrop, but you're the couple from the cashier, aren't you? A few days ago? My stomach tightened. Here it comes, I thought. Another lecture about making mountains out of molehills. We are, Harold said carefully. The woman nodded, her expression unreadable. I was 2 people behind you in line, saw the whole thing. She paused, glancing around as if checking for cameras. They had no right to do that to you. Something loosened in my chest. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. She pulled her chair closer, lowering her voice. I've been coming here twice a year for the last decade. Always the same game. Blackjack. Always the same stakes. Last year they pulled the same stunt on my friend Margaret. Said her ID didn't match her player's card. Made her wait in a back office for 3 hours before finally paying out. By then she was so rattled she just took the money and left. Did she report it? To who? The woman's laugh was bitter. Corporate customer service. They sent her a $50 voucher and a form apology. Margaret's in her 70s. She didn't have the energy to fight. Harold leaned forward. But you think there's a pattern? I think they target people they assume won't push back. She glanced at her phone again, then slid a business card across the table. I'm Ruth. That's my email. If you need a witness statement, you let me know. Before I could respond, a shadow fell across our booth. I looked up to find a man in a dark suit, his casino ID badge clipped to his breast pocket. Management. The name read Kevin Strauss, Guest Relations Supervisor. Good afternoon, he said, his smile professional and empty. I hope you're enjoying your stay. Ruth gathered her purse and stood smoothly. I was just leaving, she murmured, but not before pressing the business card firmly into my palm. Kevin watched her go, then turned his attention back to us. I wanted to check in personally. I understand there's been some confusion regarding your recent transaction. Confusion, Harold repeated, his tone flat. These things happen in busy environments. Miscommunication between departments, procedural hiccups. Kevin's smile never wavered. We'd like to resolve this amicably. In fact, I'm authorized to offer you a complimentary room upgrade for the remainder of your stay, plus dining credits, as a gesture of goodwill. I met his eyes. And our winnings? Well, that's still under review, but I'm confident we can reach a satisfactory resolution if everyone remains reasonable. The word hung in the air like a threat, wrapped in velvet. Reasonable, I said slowly. Exactly. Kevin clasped his hands together. Sometimes the simplest path forward is the best one. Wouldn't you agree? Harold's knee pressed against mine under the table. A silent question. I could feel the weight of Ruth's business card in my palm, still warm from her hand. We appreciate the offer, I said finally, but we'll wait for the review to conclude. Kevin's smile tightened just slightly. Of course, though I should mention, these processes can take time. Weeks, sometimes. You wouldn't want your vacation ruined by paperwork and waiting. We're patient people, Harold said. Kevin left us with a final reminder that his door was always open, which felt less like an invitation and more like surveillance. Harold and I sat in silence for a moment after he'd gone, both processing what had just happened. They're trying to buy us off, Harold said finally, or wear us down. I tucked Ruth's card into my purse. Same result either way. We spent the rest of the afternoon in our room, reviewing our documentation again. Every ticket stub, every timestamp, every email Clara had sent. It all lined up. Our case was solid, or at least it should have been. The call came just after 6 o'clock. Harold answered, switching to speaker so I could hear. Mr. Bellman, this is Patricia Vance from the casino's internal compliance department. The woman's voice was crisp, businesslike. I'm calling regarding your dispute filed on the 14th. Yes? Harold's hand found mine on the bedspread. Our audit has concluded. After reviewing surveillance footage, transaction records, and interviewing relevant staff, we've determined that all procedures were followed correctly. The delay at the cashier was a standard verification protocol triggered by... That's not true, I interrupted. We were singled out. Security didn't ask anyone else to step aside. Mrs. Bellman, I understand this experience was frustrating, but our investigation shows no evidence of improper conduct. The verification process is random and applies to all patrons equally. Random. The word tasted like ash. What about the inconsistencies? Harold pressed. The time gaps in the security log, the conflicting statements from I'm not at liberty to discuss internal operational details. What I can tell you is that our findings are final. However, as a gesture of customer appreciation, we'd like to offer you... We don't want vouchers, I said quietly. We want what we're owed. A pause. Your original winnings were paid out at the time of the incident, Mrs. Bellman. This matter is closed. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, something cold settling in my chest. They'd investigated themselves and found themselves blameless. Of course they had. Harold stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This is ridiculous. We have proof. We have Clara's messages showing... Messages she sent anonymously, I reminded him gently. From a burner app. She can't come forward without risking her job. Then what do we do? I didn't have an answer. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Can't talk long. Audit report has holes. Transaction log shows entry deleted 2 HRs after your cash out. Timestamp matches security review. Someone covered tracks. I have screenshot, but scared to send. What if they trace it back? Could lose everything. I'm sorry. Clara. I read the message, jumped up my bidget twice, then showed Harold. His face paled. She found something, he whispered, but she can't prove it without exposing herself. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion pressing down. And we can't use evidence we can't explain how we got. So they win. The defeat in his voice cut deeper than Kevin's threats or Patricia's dismissal. Harold had always been the steady one, the pragmatist who found solutions in spreadsheets and careful planning. Hearing him sound hopeless made everything feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. I thought of our son, how he used to solve impossible problems by breaking them into smaller pieces. Start with what you know, Mum, then find what you don't. We don't have all the pieces yet, I said slowly, but Clara does, and Ruth saw something too. I picked up my purse, pulling out the business card. Maybe we've been thinking about this wrong. What do you mean? We've been trying to prove what the casino did. But what if we prove a pattern instead? If they've done this to others, Margaret, maybe more, that's not a dispute. That's a system. Harold stopped pacing. You want to find other victims. I want to find the truth. I met his eyes. And I want Clara to know she's not alone in this. That if she comes forward, we'll have her back. That's a big ask, Ev. She could lose her job, her livelihood. I know. My throat tightened. But staying silent means they'll keep doing this. To us. To people like Margaret. To anyone they think won't fight back. Harold sat beside me, taking my hand. His palm was warm, familiar. You really want to keep going? Do you? He was quiet for a long moment, and I could almost see him weighing costs and risks the way he used to balance ledgers, careful, methodical, searching for the path that added up. Finally, he squeezed my fingers. Let's email Ruth, see if Margaret will talk to us. Ruth's response came faster than I expected. A brief email with Margaret's phone number and a warning. She's nervous. Be gentle. I called that afternoon, hands trembling slightly as I dialed. The phone rang 4 times before a cautious voice answered. Hello? Margaret? This is Evelyn Bellman. Ruth gave me your number. I hope that's all right. A pause. You're the couple from the casino. Ruth mentioned you were dealing with something. We are. I chose my words carefully. And Ruth suggested you might have had a similar experience. Silence stretched long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, what happened to you? I told her. The cashier delay, security's intervention, the humiliation of being pulled aside while other patrons stared, the audit that dismissed our claims as standard procedure. They told you it was random? Margaret's voice sharpened. That's exactly what they told me, word for word. My pulse quickened. When did this happen? 3 months ago. I won maybe $400, nothing huge, but it was mine. They made me wait nearly an hour, kept asking questions like I'd done something wrong. Then they said the machine had malfunctioned, that my payout was under review. By the time they verified everything, they'd shorted me $80. Did you challenge it? I tried. Filed a complaint. They offered me a free buffet voucher. Bitterness edged her words. I'm 73 years old. They figured I wouldn't push back. I glanced at Harold, who'd been listening on speaker. He was already writing notes, his expression grim. Margaret, would you be willing to put this in writing? A statement describing what happened. Another pause. Will it actually matter? The question hung between us, weighted with all the times she'd probably been dismissed, overlooked, told her concerns weren't valid. I understood that feeling intimately now. I think it will, I said quietly. Because you're not the only one. And if we can show a pattern, they'll just deny it. They have lawyers, resources. They do. But we have something too. I met Harold's eyes, drawing strength from his nod. We have the truth, and we have each other. Margaret exhaled slowly. Email me what you need. I'll write it up tonight. After we hung up, Harold and I sat in the kind of silence that only comes after small victories. One witness statement wouldn't win our case, but it was proof we weren't crazy, proof we weren't alone. My phone buzzed. Clara again. Found something. Can we meet? Somewhere not casino. Tonight? We arranged to meet at a diner 2 miles off the strip, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and fluorescent lighting that showed every wrinkle. Clara arrived 10 minutes late, glancing over her shoulder as she slid into the booth across from us. I shouldn't be here, she said without preamble. We understand, Harold assured her, and we appreciate. I pulled the footage. She set her phone face down on the table, fingers drumming nervously. From the night you cashed out. It's bad. My stomach knotted. Bad how? The timestamp Clara mentioned in her text. The deleted transaction. I found the corresponding surveillance clip. It shows Kevin, the floor supervisor, talking to the cashier right before you approached. He points at you, says something, and she nods. 2 minutes later, security shows up. The booth felt suddenly smaller. You're saying it was planned? I'm saying it wasn't random. Clara finally looked up, and her eyes were fierce despite the fear trembling at their edges. And I have it saved. Backed up 3 different ways because I know how things disappear around here. Harold leaned forward. Can you send it to us? That's the problem. The moment I do, they'll trace it. My employee ID is embedded in the access log. If this goes public and they investigate, they'll know I pulled it. So we're back where we started, I said softly. Not exactly. Clara's jaw set. I can't give you the footage, but I can testify to what it shows. If this goes to arbitration or court or whatever, I'll go on record. They'll fire you, Harold said bluntly. Probably. Her voice didn't waver. But my grandma is 76, and if someone did this to her, she trailed off, shaking her head. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Gratitude, yes, but also recognition. Clara wasn't just an ally. She was choosing courage over comfort, principle over security, just like we were. Thank you, I whispered. The next morning, we walked back through those casino doors with our evidence folder tucked under Harold's arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my shoulders straight, my steps measured. The casino floor looked different now, not intimidating, just garish. All those flashing lights and manufactured excitement felt hollow once you understood the machinery underneath. Harold spotted Kevin first, the floor supervisor who'd pointed us out to the cashier. He was standing near the blackjack tables, clipboard in hand, projecting authority. Mr. Bellman, Mrs. Bellman. His smile was professionally polite, nothing more. I heard you've been asking questions around the property. We have. Harold's voice was steady. We'd like to speak with management about our payout discrepancy. I'm afraid Mr. Torres, our gaming director, is unavailable this morning. Then we'll wait. I settled onto a nearby stool, crossing my ankles. We have time. Kevin's smile thinned. A few nearby patrons glanced our way, curiosity rippling outward. This really isn't the appropriate venue for what? Harold opened the folder, calm as anything. For asking why our documented winnings don't match what we were paid. For wanting to understand why we were detained by security without explanation. His voice never rose. That was the thing people didn't expect from elderly folks. We'd learned patience the hard way, learned that quiet persistence often carried more weight than shouting. Kevin's jaw tightened. "If you'll come to the office, we'd prefer to handle this here." I gestured to the casino floor around us. "Transparent, public. Unless there's something management would rather discuss privately." I watched that land. Watched Kevin calculate the optics of forcing two elderly people off the floor versus letting us state our case. Around us, more people had stopped playing. A woman at the slots was watching openly. Two men at the craps table whispered to each other. Clara appeared at the edge of my vision, adjusting chips at a nearby table. She didn't look at us directly, but I felt her presence like a hand at my back. Kevin pulled out his radio. "I need Mr. Torres on the main floor, now." We waited. Harold stood beside me, folder open to the first page of our documentation, time-stamped photos of our ticket stubs, receipts, the cashier transaction number. Everything organized, everything labeled. Mr. Torres arrived within 5 minutes, a heavy-set man in an expensive suit that didn't quite disguise his irritation. "Mr. and Mrs. Bellman, I understand there's been some confusion." "No confusion," Harold interrupted gently. "A discrepancy. We won $2,340 over 3 separate sessions. We were paid $1,800. Your records show a deleted transaction at 9:47 p.m. on the night in question." I kept my voice conversational, like we were discussing the weather. "We have witness statements from other patrons who experienced similar discrepancies, and we have testimony from staff regarding surveillance footage that shows your floor supervisor, Mr. Kevin here, directing the cashier to flag us before we even reached the window." The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut. Several people had stopped gambling entirely now, watching our little drama unfold. Mr. Torres's expression hardened. "These are serious accusations. I hope you have proof." "We do." Harold turned the folder so Torres could see the first page. "Documented, cross-referenced, time-stamped. Would you like to review it here, or shall we request formal arbitration?" Torres's hand twitched toward the folder, then stopped. He glanced around at the growing crowd of onlookers, at Clara now standing just within earshot, at Kevin, whose face had gone pale. "Perhaps," Torres said slowly, "we should discuss this in my office after all." "Actually," I said, and my voice carried farther than I'd expected, "I think we'll stay right here." Torres's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Bellman, I assure you, we've documented everything in plain sight." I gestured to the folder Harold held. "Seems fitting we resolve it the same way." A ripple of murmurs spread through the gathered crowd. The woman from the slots moved closer, her bucket of quarters forgotten. 2 security guards hovered at the perimeter, uncertain. Torres opened his mouth, but someone else spoke first. "They're telling the truth." All heads turned. Clara stepped forward, her dealer vest perfectly pressed, her expression calm but resolute. My chest tightened. She was risking everything. "I witnessed the transaction," Clara continued. "The cashier flagged their payout before processing it. I also saw Mr. Kevin instruct her to reduce the amount by exactly $540. Kevin's face flushed crimson. "That's completely..." "I have the surveillance timestamps," Clara said quietly. "Camera 7, main cashier station, 9:43 through 9:52 p.m. Torres shot Kevin a look that could have stripped paint. "Is this true?" "Sir, I can explain. It happened to me too." Another voice, An older gentleman in a plaid shirt stepped forward from the crowd, his wife clutching his arm. 3 weeks ago, won 1,800 at roulette, got paid 14. When I questioned it, security escorted me out. He gestured toward us. Said I was causing a disturbance. And me. A middle-aged woman raised her hand like she was in school. Last month, they told me the machine malfunctioned, that my payout was invalid. More voices joined in. A construction worker, a retired nurse, a young couple on their honeymoon. Each one describing the same pattern. Wins reduced, questions dismissed, complaints buried under bureaucratic double talk. I watched Torres's expression shift from irritation to something closer to panic. Around us, people had stopped gambling entirely. Phones were out now, recording. This wasn't just about our $540 anymore. Harold flipped to the next page in our folder. We contacted the Nevada Gaming Control Board yesterday. They've opened an investigation into systematic payout discrepancies at this property. His voice stayed level, professional. We provided them with documentation spanning 6 months, including sworn statements from 11 other patrons. Torres's throat worked. We weren't notified. You will be. I met his eyes steadily. By end of business today, according to their timeline, the crowd had grown. Dealers had abandoned their tables. Even the pit boss had materialized, whispering urgently into her radio. The whole ecosystem of the casino floor had paused, attention fixed on our small circle. The Bellmans are right. Another dealer stepped forward, older than Clara, with graying temples and nervous hands. I've seen it happen. We're told it's policy. Flag certain demographics, reduce payouts incrementally, bank on people not fighting back. He looked at Torres. Especially the elderly. Management said they wouldn't pursue complaints, that it was low risk. Torres's jaw clenched so hard, I heard his teeth grind. You're suspended pending... No, Clara's voice cut through. We're witnesses. You suspend us, and every person here sees exactly what this place prioritizes. She was right, and Torres knew it. The optics were impossible. Elderly couple versus corporate machine, with a growing chorus of voices confirming systematic exploitation. Phones were still recording. Someone had probably already posted to social media. Do you really want this on the evening news? Torres looked like a man watching his career crumble in real time. His gaze swept the crowd, phones raised, faces expectant, the silence pressing down like physical weight. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost all its corporate smoothness. Mrs. Bellman, Mr. Bellman. He cleared his throat. On behalf of Paradise Oasis Casino, I apologize for the confusion. We'll honor your full winnings immediately, plus compensation for the inconvenience. Harold's hand found mine. His palm was damp, trembling slightly. I squeezed back. The full amount, I said. Not a question. $540, plus an additional $200 as a gesture of goodwill. Torres gestured sharply to Kevin. Process it. Now. Kevin looked like he'd swallowed glass, but he moved toward the cashier station. The crowd parted for him. Nobody spoke. The slot machines had gone quiet, or maybe I just couldn't hear them anymore over the rushing in my ears. And the others? Harold's voice stayed calm, but I felt the steel underneath. The people who came forward? Torres's mouth thinned. We'll review each case individually. Anyone with documented discrepancies will be contacted within 48 hours. Documented and compensated, I added, with the same goodwill gesture. The pause stretched. Torres's eye twitched. Yes. Clara's expression didn't change, but I saw her shoulders drop just slightly. Relief, maybe, or vindication. The older dealer who'd stepped forward yet nodded once, arms crossed. Kevin returned with a cashier, a different woman this time, younger, eyes wide. She counted out bills with shaking hands, hundreds, twenties, a scatter of singles to make the exact total, $740. I watched each bill leave her fingers and join the stack Harold held steady. "Count it," the original cashier said from somewhere in the crowd. "Make sure they count it in front of everyone." Harold did. Out loud, methodical, every single bill, while phones recorded and the crowd held its collective breath. When he reached 740, he looked up at Torres. "It's correct." The exhale from the gathered patrons was audible. "We'll also be reviewing our internal procedures," Torres said, louder now, playing to the audience, "ensuring this kind of misunderstanding doesn't happen again." "Good," I said simply, because what else was there? We'd won. Not just the money, though that mattered, it absolutely mattered, but something bigger. We'd stood in the middle of this glittering, indifferent machine and made it stop, made it see us, made it answer. The crowd began to disperse slowly, conversations bubbling up. The woman from the slots touched my shoulder as she passed. "You're something else, honey." The older gentleman in plaid gave Harold a firm nod. The construction worker actually applauded, just twice, sharp claps that echoed. Torres retreated with Kevin in tow, already barking into his phone. The pit boss followed, casting nervous glances back at us. Security melted into the background like they'd never been there at all. Clara approached, hands clasped in front of her. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not backing down." "Thank you," Harold countered, "for the evidence." She smiled, small, genuine. "I just keep good records." I thought of our kitchen table back home, covered in spreadsheets and printouts and sticky notes. So do we. The casino floor slowly resumed its rhythm. Machines chimed, dealers shuffled cards. Life flowed back into the space like water filling a basin. But something had shifted. People glanced at us differently now, not with pity or dismissal, but with recognition. Harold folded the bills carefully, tucked them into his wallet. His hands had stopped shaking. We rode the elevator in silence. Harold's hand stayed in mine, our fingers laced tight. When the doors slid open on our floor, the sudden quiet felt thick, muffled, like stepping underwater after a thunderstorm. Inside the room, Harold set his wallet on the dresser with the same careful precision he'd used counting those bills. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "We did it," he said. I sank down beside him. We did. My legs felt loose, unsteady. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was draining away, leaving behind something raw and trembling. I pressed my palms to my knees, felt the scratch of polyester against skin. "I thought," Harold stopped, started again. "When Torres first walked away, I thought we'd lost." "I know." "But you didn't." I turned to look at him. Really look. The lines around his eyes had deepened over these past days, carved by stress and sleepless nights. But something else lived there too now. Something I hadn't seen since before David died. Certainty, maybe. Or just the knowledge that he could still fight when it mattered. "Neither did you," I said. He made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Then his shoulders shook. and I realized he was crying, quiet, almost soundless, tears tracking down his weathered cheeks. I pulled him close, felt his weight against me, solid and familiar and alive. "We're okay," I whispered into his hair. "We're okay." My phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. I almost ignored it, but Harold pulled back, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand. Could be important. Could be. I fished the phone from my purse. 3 texts, all from Jennifer, our daughter-in-law. "Mum just told me what happened. Are you both all right? Why didn't you call us? We would have come. I'm so sorry we doubted you. You were right to push back." I stared at the screen. Harold leaned over, reading past my shoulder. "Huh," he said. The next message came through as we watched. "Brian wants to talk when you're ready. He feels terrible." Brian, our son-in-law, who'd suggested last week we might be overreacting, that maybe we'd misunderstood the situation, who'd spoken to us like we were children throwing a tantrum over spilled milk. I typed back slowly, "We're fine. We'll call later." Harold's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, eyebrows lifting. "It's Margaret, my sister, who'd asked gently but firmly if we were sure this was worth the stress at our age." Harold answered, put it on speaker. "Hello? Harold? Evelyn?" Margaret's voice crackled with energy. "Jennifer just told me. I can't believe... Well, I can believe it. But I can't believe you actually got them to admit it. In front of everyone." "In front of quite a few people," Harold said carefully. "You too." She laughed, warm and genuine. "I should have known better than to suggest you let it go. You've always been stubborn when you're right. Remember the time you fought City Hall over that zoning issue? Got the whole neighborhood behind you?" I did remember. 20 years, Aitchibor, ago, maybe more. We'd won that one too. "I'm proud of you," Margaret continued, softer now. "Both of you. And I'm sorry I didn't take it more seriously from the start." Something tight in my chest loosened. "Thank you," I managed. After we hung up, Harold and I sat in the quiet again. But it felt different now. Less heavy, more open. Like a door had been unlocked from the inside. "Clara deserves something," I said. "More than just thanks." Harold nodded. "She risked her job." "More than that. She believed us." When everyone else had looked at 2 elderly people making noise and seen confusion, maybe even senility, Clara had seen the truth. She'd looked past our age and our trembling hands and our old-fashioned politeness, straight through to the principal underneath. We found Clara directing customers an hour later. She spotted us, her guarded expression warming. "Mr. and Mrs. Bellman." She checked for management nearby. "Congratulations." "We wanted to thank you properly," I said. "You would have figured it out." She smiled quickly. "You're both sharp." "But we're glad we had you anyway," Harold said. Clara's eyes brightened. She blinked hard, looking toward the humming slot machines. "I've worked here 3 years, watched people get walked over. Most don't fight back." She turned back. "You showed me something I'd forgotten, that standing up still means something." I squeezed her hand. "You took a real risk." "So did you. Coming back to that floor, knowing management wanted you gone. That took guts." 3 people bound by understanding that fairness isn't given, it's defended. "If you need a reference or things get difficult," Harold began, "I'll call. Promise." Clara smiled genuinely before returning to work. Harold and I wandered the casino one last time. The bells and lights felt different now, less overwhelming, just noise. "Ready to go home?" Harold asked. I nodded. The drive east stretched long and quiet. Past Arizona, Harold took my hand. I kept thinking about David while we fought this, wondering what he'd think. Our son, gone 5 years, a heart attack at 42. The grief had carved us hollow. "He'd be proud," I said. "You think?" "I know." I remembered David arguing with unfair teachers, standing up to supervisors, volunteering at legal clinics. He'd say we did exactly right. Harold's hand tightened. "Maybe we're not quite done yet." Done with what? With living. Really living. His expression turned fierce, hopeful. "I thought after David we were just running out the clock, but this reminded me we're still here, still capable." I thought about documenting evidence, the conversations with Clara, refusing to be dismissed, how alive I'd felt. "Yeah," I said. "We are." Home appeared 3 days later, our modest ranch with weathered siding and overgrown gardens. After Vegas's sprawl, it felt right. Solid. Ours. Harold carried bags while I breathed familiar scents of grass and pine. Mrs. Chen waved from across the street. "Everything okay?" she called. "Everything's fine." I meant it. Inside, nothing had changed. David's photo above the mantel, my crocheting draped over the armchair, Harold's crossword half finished. But something had shifted. In us. Harold appeared holding envelopes. Mail came. One confirmed our settlement. The other, from Margaret before our call, suggested we consider letting this go. I set them down. "We should call Jennifer and Brian tonight." "We should." Harold wrapped his arms around me. "But first, let's just be here." I leaned into him, feeling his steady breathing. Outside, afternoon sun cast long shadows. Everything ordinary, everything right. We'd gone to Vegas seeking escape from quiet grief. We'd found something better. Not just vindication or money or justice, though we'd claimed all three. We'd found ourselves again, found each other, found proof we still mattered, still had fight, still deserved to be heard. Standing in our kitchen, Harold's arms around me, sunlight streaming through the window, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope.